Hey there, YouTube. Doc's Motorcycle Service. Rar, 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 rar. Welcome back to the shop. So YouTube, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to jump straight in here to building construction part 2, part dos. And in this video, we are going to take a look at the pictures from the time this building showed up on a trailer. I think it was on a Monday morning around 6:30, and how these three guys went to work and did their thing. Oh, YouTube, I was so impressed with these guys. You could tell this wasn't the first time they'd done this. We're going to look at the pictures. I took a lot of pictures. We're going to talk over the pictures. Some of the pictures just might even have music on them, so you can just sit back and look at them. Shouldn't be a very long video, so let's go ahead and get started on that. So here we go. The concrete foundation was in. The guys showed up with a trailer. I was really surprised they had everything on one load. The first thing they did was lay the base rails out. And you can see on the top of the base rails there, those pieces that are poking up. We'll talk about those in a minute. But they got the base rail laid out to the perimeter of the foundation. And from there, they started to erect the wall supports. And the wall supports set on top of those pieces jutting out of the base rails. And the only really thing that they screwed down first was the base rails. Once they got it square, they started putting everything on it together, sliding those wall supports in, and then sticking the roof supports on top of those. And again, I was really surprised because I didn't see a single screw going in anywhere, and then I figured out why. If you'll look in these pictures here, you'll start to see them using ratchet straps. And these ratchet straps were used to square one corner. And when they got that one corner perfectly squared, then they went to the next corner. And then the next corners. And then once they got all those squared, they started putting on the roof supports. One long piece, 40 foot long, that this dude carried up on the ladder. And then once they got all four corners squared and those top pieces put in, then they started tightening everything up. But I was really impressed by the fact that they wanted this thing square in all four corners before they started putting any screw into anything. So from there, they just kept putting pieces in and pieces in and pieces in. And I mean, these guys were working like a machine. It was obvious this was not the first time that they had ever done this. There's a couple of zoom-ins on those ratchet straps. It looked like a spider web for a while. And I mean, for them to show up and get started on this thing at lunchtime and to be making the progress that they were making by the time they got ready to leave at 6:30 that evening was awesome. So then they went into the side rails. And again, as an amateur, not knowing what you're looking at, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. But they went ahead and got the door in, and I think we're coming up on day 2. Now, day 2, they showed up about 6:30 in the morning. They pulled all the pieces out. That's the exterior piece of the siding. That's the inside white. And I really like the fact that everything on the inside was white, because that's going to help give better lighting in the shop. Got the insulation laid out. Again, just doing their thing, man. You know, I didn't get in their hair, but I tried to take a picture about every 30 minutes. Now, when they started putting the sidewalls up, they would put up a piece of insulation, and then they would put a sidewall panel over that. Then they would put up another piece of insulation. And all this stuff was rolled out and cut, and then insulation sidewall, until they got one end buttoned up. Then from there, I believe they started on the other end. That's a good picture of the interior there. Exterior there on the right end of the building. And then, let's see, where'd they go from here? Yep, they started on the far end. Now, I don't know if there was any rhyme or reason to the way they put this up like this, but like I said, it worked out, and I was very impressed with it. They just did a good job. So, you know, again, they're just doing insulation sidewall, insulation sidewall, insulation sidewall. And then they got that end done, and they started across the back. I'm telling you, man, crew worked together. I was sitting maybe 30, 40 feet away from them and hardly ever heard them talk at all, as they just went about their business. Now, before I forget, I will give you a tech tip here. When these guys are done, if you can be there with them while they're doing the building, that's awesome. If you can't be while they're doing it, be there when they first start and ask them to leave you any of the leftover materials, because you never know when a piece is going to get damaged by hail or a limb or something like that. And if you've got somebody who can come out and take a piece that you already have and replace the bad piece with it, then you don't have to wait for them to order 2 panels of the specific color that you got. So here they started working on the front wall, doing their thing again, and I'm guessing it's probably getting close to about lunchtime now. It was kind of hard to tell. It was kind of overcast that day, and they just kept working their way down through there. Just insulation, sidewall, screw that piece in enough to hold it, come back, insulation, sidewall, tuck the other piece under it, and just kept getting it. I mean, I was really impressed with these guys, man. I had no fault with them. Now they got started on the roof, and I was tickled that the biggest guy of the 3 was the guy climbing around on top of this roof like a billy goat. I mean, there he is standing on the roof facing downhill, and that dude would just put in enough of these things to hold them in place, and then he would just walk straight down the edge and just put a screw in, put a screw in, put a screw in, put a screw in. I'd like to have $1 for every screw that is in this building. And the other side of it was the screw heads. The part that you actually see on the exterior was, I guess the word is painted to match the specific color of where they were going. So the burgundy screws went in the burgundy sidewall, and tan screws went into the tan pieces and the roof. So I think we're getting close to wrapping this up here. I really think we're close to the end of the pictures. I can't see what's coming, but at this point I think they were putting the edge trims on. If you look above the door there, there's no trim right there, and now there's trim there. So I think that's what they were doing. They were wrapping up the loose ends and getting it put together so it would all come together. And I mean, there you go. We're getting down to about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, and these old boys are finishing up what they're doing. Well, YouTube, there you go. So she's done. This was a process that started at around 12:30 yesterday, and you saw the pictures, and if I've not already mentioned it, and they finished up about 10 minutes ago, and it's 6:30 today. They were back out here this morning at 6:30, and I'm telling you, man, these guys worked their tails off. Lot of interesting tidbits of information here as you saw it go together, and I probably talked about it override, but just some of the stuff that I noted, like right here on this corner piece, you can't really see it on camera, but where those 2 pieces met at the angle, they caulked that. This whole piece down through here, caulked on that corner down there. Walk-in door looks good. Everything looks good. We got a little landscaping that we got to do, but we're in the planning stages of that now. Corners look great. I mean, thoroughly impressed with these guys and everything that they did. Nice little hangover. Let's go ahead and walk in and see how she looks. Well, there you go. I know the lighting's not the best, but I wanted to wrap this up while it was fresh in my mind. I can tell you, man, that they did a good job. I'm really impressed with these fellas. What we're going to do now, I ain't going to take up a lot of your time, but the next step, the garage door is probably the important thing, but I spoke with the guy about that today, and he said that like everybody else in the country, their manufacturer's running behind on getting him doors, but he was expecting mine this week. either Thursday or Friday, and he said that as soon as it came out, he would put it at the top of the list to get out so we can secure the building. I mean, these boys did a good job, real good job. You might be saying to yourself, well, you ain't got no windows in it. Well, you're right. We were doing this on a budget. Some stuff I can do myself, and maybe I've still got too much of the big city left in me, that a window is just something that somebody can crawl through. So, what did we learn about this? And I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again and go just slightly more in depth on it. So, plan your work and work your plan. When you design, when you figure out that you want a building, steps one, go to your homeowners association, go to your city council, city permits and planning, county permits and planning, a combination of two, a combination of none, whoever, whatever, wherever you go, and see what is allowed. Your homeowners association may only allow you a certain size. You know, we mentioned before, there can be restrictions. So think about that. Get all that information. Once you've come together on what you can build, then take a look at your budget. And this just kind of popped into my head today, and it seems like a pretty decent formula. So I'm going to say that you should budget an excess $1,000 for every $10,000 you're going to spend, because you have no idea of what you're going to want or how much something's going to cost. For example, when we started planning this building, this OSB board that's on the wall back here, this press wood, was $7 a sheet, 4 foot wide, 8 foot long. When we finally got around to needing it, it was $49 a sheet. Okay, so plan for the unexpected. Your building budget should include everything that allows you to work in the building. Okay, think about that. Listen to me. Everything that allows you to work in the building. Your foundation, the building itself, any extra tools or lifts or jacks or anything that you're going to need to work in the building. And again, the building doesn't come finished on the inside. You've got to finish that. Next, your budget should include the cost of your electrical work. Okay, you got to have lights, got to have power. Okay, dig into this. Are you going to be able to run it off of the house with a 50 amp breaker? And then be limited to how many things that you can do and run at one time? I mean, God, all y'all live in a house, right? You've had your TV running, you've had your oven on, you've had your coffee maker percolating, and went and threw a hot pocket in the microwave and hit start and tripped a breaker because you're pulling too much amps on that circuit, that little breaker box that I'll show you. All right, so my plan here was, when I went to the electrician, and we'll go into this more deeply, the first words out of his mouth were, how many amps are you going to be pulling in the shop? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, if you don't tell me what kind of amperage you're going to be using and how often you're going to be using it, I can't tell you how much the wiring job's going to be. So he had me sit down with a very rough draft piece of paper, sketched out the building, and sketched out everywhere I wanted everything in it. And that helped us determine how many breakers we need based off how many outlets we had. And that's why when you see the box, the breaker box, the circuit box, whatever you want to call it, it's it's like this big, okay? Because we've got a 20 amp breaker running amperage to every 4 outlets. And they call them a quad, where you can plug 4 things in at one time. So 2 over here, 2 right here, and then these 2 right here. So there's a circuit breaker for those 2, and a circuit breaker for these 2, and a circuit breaker for these 2. All right, we'll talk more about that, but basically what that means is I could have a mobile air compressor plugged into that one over there, and probably a a battery charger for an electrical tool. Skip one, come to this circuit right here. I could probably have a coffee maker plugged into this one, and a TV, and maybe even a microwave, and it not trip. And the other little secret was we went one step heavier with wire than we needed to. So if a year from now I find out that I'm pulling a lot of amperage in one area of this building, then I can go back and put a 25 amp breaker in, or a 30 amp breaker in, and the wire that we have in the wall will still carry that much amperage without melting. Think about what you're going to have to buy to put in there. You're going to buy a big old toolbox to take all your little toolboxes and put in. You're going to buy a $500 lift. You're going to buy a $1,000 lift. Okay? How much is the coating for the floor? How much is the wood on the wall? How much are the lights hanging from the ceiling? How much are your extension cord pull downs? These are all things that you got to think about. And then you might have to go back and say, well, gosh, you know, I got about $12,000 for this building, and I want it 60 foot by 60 foot, but what good is a building if you can't use it? What good is the building if it doesn't have electricity in it? What good is the building if you ain't got no tools to work on it in? Just some things to think about, YouTube. You know me, I'm trying to help you think. We're in the building. You can see some stuff in here. It's a hot mess. I'm not gonna lie about it. Oh, before I forget, going back and revisiting right quick. So after the guy left, with all having the building up and everything going, and us waiting on the door, which segues me into another thing here called patience. I'll come back to that here in a minute. The door didn't show up until about 3 or 4 weeks after the building was done. And I didn't put anything in here. I might have put the bike in here, and I think I ran a drop cord from the mini shop up here just to put it on a battery tender to get it out of the weather. But you know, I didn't want to put anything in here till we had a door, so we just went and got a tarp. And you can see some pictures right here. And if I'm able, I'll zoom in on these pictures. But I got these big clamps. What we did was, you'll see in the pictures, we put the tarp over the door. And then I basically, if you can see this, I just basically went to these beams, pushed the tarp around the beam, and put the clamp on it to sort of keep it snug. You know, we got a real open field over here. We're out in the country. We get a lot of breeze out here. I just wanted something to stop the limbs and the rain, some of the rain and trash and varmints and snakes and whatnot from getting into the building. And, you know, it looked pretty good. You can see in the pictures right there, it looked pretty good from a distance. It looked like a door. So we had that up for the 2 or 3 weeks that it took to get the doorman back out here. Got the door up. So we're probably going to, segueing into patience. I think this was an opportunity the Lord used to teach me patience, because keep in mind, once you put that money down, it's totally out of your hand. Okay? I mentioned before, 4 people to put this building up. 1 crew to pour the concrete, another to erect the building, and another to put the door on. And the inspections that came along with that. And them inspectors, they're on their own time frame, man. You gotta understand it. So be patient with this thing. Understand it's not going to happen. Remember the timeline so far. April 2021 is when we put money down on the building. August 2021, the trees got cleared. Sometime in September, we got the concrete poured. October-ish, November-ish, the building got erected. 3 weeks later, the door got put up. Okay, so here we are in July, and we're actually starting to be able to use the building now. And so that's the last thing I'm going to harp on. So where do we go from here? Next video you should see after this should be electrical. And we're going to talk about the electrical. We're talking about the diagrams and figuring out what you're going to use, and then transferring that over to graph paper so it'll help give the electrician an idea of how much feet of wire he needs to pull or needs to buy to come out here. And here's another thing about patience. You're going to start on this thing and you're going to change your mind about something. For example, we decided to put a 4-switch not receptacle, but not outlet. I don't know what you call it. It's got 4 switches in it over here by the door. One to run the outside lights, one to run the inside lights, one to run the fan, and one to run the other little lights that we'll talk about. But you know, I was sitting out here one night with Linda enjoying the building. I said, you know, can you envision a moment that we might be wanting to sit out here with the roll down door up, sitting on the outside, having a tasty beverage, and not want them lights on above us because they would draw bugs to us, but we still might want the light on at the door. She's like, yeah. So we changed it to have 2 switches at the door. One to work the outside light, the walk-in door, or the man door as they like to call it, and one switch to run the lights outside the roll-up door. So the spotlight, we put a security light, a motion light on this end of the building, and we put an outlet out there. All of that came to mind as we're in it. Okay, so you're going to have changes. Be prepared for that. But if you go back to that estimate that I gave you of having $1,000 for every $10,000 of building you're going to build, or $100 for every $1,000 you're going to build, you're going to have a little money left over. Because the thing is you don't want to get all this in your mind and get it, this is how I want it, but God, it's going to be good, it's going to be woo, and then not have the money to finish. So just do some planning on it. And here we are again in 2022, and Republican president, Democratic president, Chinese, Russian, whatever, we can't get anything that we need. And if you do get it, it's sky high. Okay? So think about all this stuff. As my daddy used to say, ruminate on it a little bit and make sure that you got the money to get what you want. So next video up, we're going to jump into the electrical. We're going to talk about that. And while we're getting this stuff put together and on the editing software and edited and turned into movies and uploaded, Linda and I are going to be tidying up out here, and we're going to get Donna out. Donna needs a bath. She's got almost 2 years worth of dust on her, so we're going to roll her outside and give her a good bath, and we're going to bring her back in. We got a few things to do to her before we actually start shooting videos on her. If you remember back to the lowering kit that we put in, and I'll link a little video to that right here, or over here, wherever it shows up. We put the lowest possible lowering kit on it we could. Well, we figured out during the move that it was too low. Okay, the front end is sitting lower than the rear end of the bike, and the bike is down as far as it would go in the back, so it's kind of like this and it looks like crap. So we're going to have to pull the front end off of it and put some 1-inch or 2-inch spacers in it and take a look at it again and see how we like that. But you know, the bike's got to have the right stance on it. It's just got to have the right stance on it. Anyway, YouTube, I appreciate you coming by the shop. As always, rate, comment, and share. Handle your business, ride safe, and save some money. And cut!